even MEPs and institution to let's say to reply to our own sanction. That was crazy from the Chinese, and call now, in my opinion, for a strong intervention and position of the European Parliament that can enhance its role on this issue, and Syria, of course, and the Syrian responsible for this situation can be, has to be among the first logical person to be sanctioned, exactly, because we cannot do anything else at the moment. So what we wanted to do to so bring them to the system of international justice. But this sanction regime is still something that must be put in place, certainly for many other situations like the Syrian one. Let me now welcome Mariam Shamdin, founding member of White Hats Organization, which will be our last speaker before the question and answer time. Please, Mariam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gianfranco. Thank you all. Good morning, everyone, and I'm glad to be with you today. In fact, wherever there is a conflict, woman, we are also, after 10 years of the Syrian revolution, where the women have contributed with the men, where they went out together asking for the political change, justice, and political participation, the Syrian women gave lots of sacrifice, and they linked their destiny with the revolution. And also the Syrian women got involved with lots of activities, including political activities, social and media, and also civil society at the local level and national, hoping that this victory, or the victory of the revolution, would give them, beside the freedom and dignity and liberty and equity and equality, and to participate in all life aspects, and to play the political transformation, to play a role in changing their situation, and also the social complex of the Syrian community in lots of aspects. But unfortunately, until now, the Syrian woman could not achieve those and she could not achieve any gains, and not in the political rights, and not in the social rights. That's because of the several social divisions, and also the control of the traditional forces that limited the role of women by justification of security, and also in its conquest to change the social understanding, social traditions. We have to focus on some aspects, the gender dimensions, and also the gender roles in the revolution, and also the conflict to participate at the social aspect. So she wanted to have the revolution to be an incentive for her role, and also to achieve justice and liberty and equality. And we saw that we had at the beginning of the revolution to get away of the rhetoric that is directed to the woman as a partial participant, and also to look for equality and finding solutions for the conflicts between the international laws and the local culture in Syria based on the traditions. And I will stop here because for sure there will be questions. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I move to the question and answer period. And I have a couple of questions, but if there is anyone else who wants to take the floor, in particular to Heba and Mariam, please let me know and show. I should like to ask Heba, Could you tell us more about the condition in which refugee Syrian women and girls lives in Turkey? And I know you have already spoken a little bit on that, but and in which way refugee women are excluded in the framing of policies and strategy aimed at addressing their need? And what need to change to ensure that women and girls can be transformative agent for change? And I want to add also the climate that you have in these refugee camps in Turkey, especially having in mind what happened in Turkey in this period, in which, at the end of the day, we have seen on this issue of the, of course, it's another subject, but it's still very actual. We have seen demonstration against the decision of President Erdogan concerning the Istanbul Convention, etc. There is a mobilization of the civil society, which is the climate you can have from the point of view of the refugee camps.
Thanks so much, Gianfranco. Before answering your question, I would like really to comment on one of the words that Alessandra said, it's solidarity among women. So in the preparation for this meeting, I was discussing that with our colleagues in No Peace Without Justice. And to me, it was really important to achieve the diversity in this session. So to me, me and Mariam, both of us are Syrians. I'm Arab. Mariam is Kurdish person. And both of us, we stress the idea that both of us have to be in this panel because it's the diversity and solidarity among women, inter-religion and inter-nations, which is only the stakeholder, which is only the base in order to build sustainable peace. Going back to your question, Gianfranco, actually, let me take you a journey back to 1991, when the UN High Commissioner for Refugees adopted guidelines on the protection of refugee women. These guidelines called for integrating the resources and needs of refugee women into all aspects of programming so as to assure equitable protection and assistance activities. The guidelines include also, but go well beyond traditional notions of protection through promotion of refugee laws by emphasizing the intrinsic relationship that exists between protection and assistance. So, despite the existence of this linkage between protection and assistance, the two were differentiated, lest the refugee girl and women turn into passive recipients of aid and those beings deprived of will and need protection in the guardian rather than the interactive sense. Perhaps the essential point here is the law, in which refugee girls and women obey. And as you all mentioned, now the withdrawal of Turkey from Istanbul Convention is going to have its impact on on Turkish women and girls and Syrians as well. And so back to the Syrian refugee women and girls, there was a need to achieve harmonization between the multiple backgrounds of refugees and the laws of the host countries. But in different asylum cases in the neighboring countries of Syria, there are no special asylum laws, but rather the laws of the countries itself are applied to refugees. For example, polygamy is permitted in the Syrian culture and law, while in Turkey, the law doesn't allow that. And the second wife remains in any case unrecognized by her husband and doesn't possess any legal status. And thus, she is prevented from the recognition of the lineage of her children. She also doesn't have an official marriage contract, and this is automatically deprive her of all the wife privileges. Underage marriage that was referred to by our honorable speakers is also common in the Syrian society, and its cases increase with the deteriorating economic situation of the Syrian refugees and the lack of work opportunities, of course, while it's considered a crime punishable by the Turkish law, and the father and husband are imprisoned if the marriage is under the age of 18. In this context, Syrian women, refugees, are provided with the ways to report these cases in police stations or family departments. But here, most of these girls and women, they find themselves fluctuating between two difficult choices. So either to report the father and the groom, who will be imprisoned or deported to unsafe areas inside Syria, or to accept the marriage. Also, but I think, also additionally in the labor laws and the issuance of work permits and health insurance, most refugee women work for low daily wages in the farms and factories without health insurance, and therefore they or their families are not compensated if they are exposed to any accident at work or lose their lives. And this applies of course, to the refugee men as well. So my suggestion, if there were gender sensitive asylum policies that involved refugee women and took into account their privacy, the level of violence, injustice, and guardianship over them would be much lower. In order just to finalize my answer, I think there is an important role of the civil society. And here I'm referring to the Syrian civil society and the Turkish civil society, because this intersectional relationship brings better results. I believe that the most important things that the civil societies should be doing: first is the real assessment of refugee girl and women situations; second, advocacy for the enactment of laws in which refugee women and girls are included. And by this, we're going to have, at the end of the day, we're going to have policies that protect women and include them in their own protection. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Very interesting, and certainly that deserve further action. Now I'm turned to Mariam, asking her, first of all, as a founding member of the White Helmet, you had to witness the many horror of the war in Syria, including the violence imposed on women and girls. How the past decade has affected Syrian women, and what kind of repercussion it will have on the future from your perspective, having this experience. And second question, in your work in the civil society support room in Geneva, you had the opportunity to observe closely the work of the international community in the effort to bring an end to the war in Syria. And we are going to see what's happened next week here in Brussels. How the European institution, UN agency, international recovery program, and I had the European Parliament and its representative that are here, could and should better address the issue of the sexual gender-based violence to empower survivors and civil society organizations and to ensure an active and meaningful involvement on Syrian women and girls. These are my two questions. Please, Mariam.
Thank you once again, Gianfranco. But just to comment. Okay. For the first question, when we talk about 1 decade of the Syrian revolution, what it characterizes is the woman participation in a very active way. Also, Syria was considered one of the closed countries on freedoms, especially the freedom of women, but also, unfortunately, the revolution took different directions, different divisions that affected directly the Syrian woman, where the Syrian community is divided into religious component and also ideological, civil, that deteriorate the women freedom, that also has limited her from enjoying her freedom, and also allowed those forces to enforce and force their policies and their strategies of violence against women and their ideologies against them. Of course, we should not forget the small part from women managed to get off those social divisions, and also they managed to achieve their own hopes to lead the civil society leadership. We see it on the Syrian civil society, where we see lots of Syrian women in leading NGOs, and we see now Hiba is with us, UNDP as gender consultant. This is a pride for the Syrian organization, Syrian NGOs, to have a Syrian woman at such a position. Also, so this part of the Syrian women who managed to get rid of those social divisions, they managed to achieve their hopes in the social or civil society inside Syria or outside Syria. But until even this part, I would like to comment, this part they did not achieve or reach until now to practice their comprehensive freedom in the political field. This is unfortunate. Syrian woman is excluded from the political context or political action. So this consequences for the future is still unknown for the woman freedom. The woman didn't take her role, her efficient role to participate on or to enjoy her equality or justice. The civil division consequences on her, and also the increase of the extreme ideologies in Syria contributes also in justifying violence against women, against their religious and national and some traditions. Besides this, also the enforcement, also the dictator organizations in the different regions in Syria, from the Bashar al-Assad regime, also to the Kurdish Union Party, al-Nusra, and the Syrian opposition.
Thank you.
This is for the first question. The second question, shall I answer it now or after?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Also very important and interesting. And now, if there is no other question, I will leave the floor to Niccolò Figate-Lamanca, Secretary General of No Peace Without Justice, also to reply to this last intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gianfranco. It's my real pleasure to provide more thanks than conclusions to this meeting. Before I start, Mariam, I think you had another issue you wanted to address, if I understood correctly from the translation. Do you want to complete what you were saying before?
Yes, because there were two questions also, or her job in Geneva. Do I have time to answer that question? The second question.
You absolutely do have time. Thank you.
Thank you once again. So as for the second question, being a member of the civil society support room in Geneva, this is a good opportunity to oversee and work with the international community. Unfortunately, frankly, the international organizations and UN organizations, they are not free of the international community policies, where they have their own interests at the head, where it is also they still give the support for on violence, watching on violence, where we see lots of cooperation and coordination between the international community and those forces who are controlling Syria, and also they are increasing the normalization with those forces, including the Bashar al-Assad regime, who all the Syrians see them as the main cause of the violence against happens to women. What we want, in fact, what we are aiming at is that the UN organizations, UN agencies, and European organizations is to free themselves from the political decisions that are taken in the corridors of the UN organization to divide between freedom and rights other than the political interest, and also to work on the accountability mechanisms for the criminals accused of violence and crimes, whether they are individuals or entities. What the Syrian women need today from the international organizations is to pressure on the Syrian parts who are negotiating now to find a political solution and drafting a Syrian constitution, and to have the woman her role in that constitution, and also to achieve equality and for the Syrian woman, and also to have the gender issues clear for the women rights as a main partner in the community, not to look at her with mercy and as partial. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mariam. I think you hit the nail on the head. The empowerment of women is exactly moving away from looking at women with, you said, mercy in Arabic. It's not a mercy, it's about rights, and it's not about giving things, it's about recognizing the right to have participation. I think with the time left, I really want to say thank you to Heba, to Mariam, to our Syrian partners that have conducted this study that gave rise to those recommendations, to those policy recommendations. This is not easy. I just want to say that it's not easy. It's not easy because it's very easy to go into communities and say, okay, what did the enemy did to your women? You know, your women, already the terminology, and the enemy is bad because they did things to our women, as if the women belonged to the community or to the men of the community. It was harder because this was about the experience of women that was a result of violations or denial of rights within their own communities. Not to minimize in any way the role of the war criminals. Bashar al-Assad was mentioned by Alessandro Moretti and his wife as somebody that should be in the forefront of those considered for sanctions by the European Union. And we know the work of the IIIM and of the human rights investigation by the COI. But it's harder to go and ask, okay, you know, the enemy did those things, but what happens to you today? What happens to you? Where are your rights being denied? Where, in the name of protection, you're not allowed to go to school? You know, where in the name of protection you're forced or given as if you were an object in early marriage to somebody else, whether from the host country, whether from a different country, whether within the community. Those violations are more insidious. Those violations are harder to tackle. And those violations are the ones that comprise the daily lives of refugee women, not just Syrian women in Turkey, but the response by the international community to the needs, let's say, of refugee women, focuses on material needs. It doesn't sufficiently focus on the right to be recognized as an agent. And I think this was the harder conversation to have, and Heba and her team and the partners that she has worked with were able to have that conversation precisely because they are part of the Syrian community. This particular field work was done in Turkey, but it was extremely important that it was done by Syrian women with Syrian women. and interviewing different types of groups with different experiences to get as much as possible a varied idea of the reality. I think what we learn is that ultimately the violations are ingrained in the way that the protection system is designed, which is, again, the very words we use. It's protection. Protection by denial of rights, of course, is no protection at all. And it reproduces the same dynamics that lead to oppression and have led, even in this case, patriarchal fascist dynamics that led to the most tragic conflict in the last 10 years in Syria, the consequences of which Syrian women and men still suffer, not just in the region, but also those who are still in Syria. So I think I cannot say anything more than Mariam and Heba have already said, with my deepest thanks to the members of the European Parliament that have brought their presence and their strength and their proposals and their willingness to bring those issues to the forefront of the political debate. So thank you to Alessandra, thank you to Eva, thank you to Brando, and looking forward to taking this more to a political level together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolò, and I think that was the right way to conclude this very useful meeting and event. So I thank you personally, also our MEPs and our Syrian friends, and let's work again and again on this issue that is crucial to us and certainly also to you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
For our audience, we will have more civil society participants at the civil society edition of this, in which we will discuss more in detail both the work and the recommendations, and what civil society can do. And that will be on the 30th of March. We'll see you there.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.